Another summer, another visit to Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, America's roller coast. That's Gatekeeper that you see flying over the main entrance. And we're inside the entrance. In front of us is the 1912 Mueller Carousel, the oldest ride in the park. They still have the 150 years of Cedar Point there, which actually happened in 2020, right when the pandemic hit. So they still have that out there in case people haven't come out since the pandemic. So we're going to do another walkthrough of Cedar Point. Seems like we do these every year because things keep changing in the park, and there are quite a few changes that happened this year that I want to show you. The carousel does have a Wurlitzer band organ that you can hear in the background. It plays all day. Over on the left is the French Quarter, where you can get beignets and sweets. Over here on the right is Point Plaza, which has lots and lots of Cedar Point themed gifts. They have some of the most amazing gifts of any park in the country, all themed to Cedar Point and the rides. Jack Aldrich Theater is on the left. We were here on opening day, May 6th. So what you see is a lot of mulch because the plantings hadn't taken hold yet. The plantings are beautiful in this park, flowers everywhere, but of course, because of the chilly weather that comes up around the shores of Lake Erie, they still hadn't gone in yet. But by summertime, it should be a glorious spectacle of color all the way down. This is the main Midway. Cedar Point, famous for just having gigantic rides everywhere you look. This is Raptor over in front of us there with the aqua-tinged track. This is Hugo's over on the left, a big eatery with pizza and pasta. And Raptor was a really popular ride when it was put in, and it still is incredibly popular 30 years later. It's a suspended coaster, and it's probably one of the greatest suspended coasters by Bolliger and Mabillard that has ever been built. Still really, really good ride, very intense. You can see the Sky Ride going overhead, and that takes you to the far north end of the main Midway. Over on the right, you get a glimpse of the Ferris wheel and Max Air. The Ferris wheel is now part of a new stretch of Midway that was created and opened this year, and it's called the Boardwalk. The Ferris wheel was there, but they built the Boardwalk next to it toward the north, and we're going to take a look at that in a little bit. Here you can get fresh cut fries and cheese on a stick. Now, many of you may remember from my past Cedar Point videos that I love cheese on a stick, and it is extremely hard to find. In fact, Cedar Point is the only park in the US right now that serves cheese on a stick, sadly. When I was there, I was told by one of the concession workers that cheese on a stick was not going to be available until Memorial Day at the earliest, but maybe not at all this season because of supply issues. And I mean, it's cornmeal and cheese, and they have corn dogs, so maybe they can't get cheese anymore. I don't know. But that broke my heart. It was very sad. I had no cheese on a stick on this visit. Unusual for me. We just passed an entrance over there to another section of Midway where you could ride the Blue Streak, my favorite ride in the park, the old wooden coaster from 1964. And that path also takes you to Valraven, which is that bronze track that you see in front of us. Over on the left, you can see Cedar Downs, a thrilling ride, the last racing derby, still in existence. It is an amazing ride, incredibly fast, huge, and it was not running when we were there, unfortunately. This is an issue that a lot of parks are having. They can't get help. Seems like nobody wants to work. So you'll see a lot of food concessions are closed. They had to bring in food trucks again because they simply can't get enough help to staff the park. And as you notice, this is a huge park, so it needs lots and lots of workers. I'm sure the situation will improve once school lets out in June, but for now, there were a lot of rides and concessions that simply weren't operating. So they opened the things that they felt people would really want to engage in. Over here on the left is the final Cadillac car ride in the park. They used to have 3 antique car rides, and last year the one down at the north end was removed, leaving us with just one. One was removed for Valraven several years ago. So that Cadillac car ride is the last antique ride in the park. So if you're a grandparent and want to take your kids on a nice calm ride, that's one of them. And here you can see more of Valraven. There it goes. Valraven is a dive coaster. You can see that very sharp drop on the first hill there. It plummets you 90 degrees. Before it does, it holds you there for a moment so you can really savor looking straight down at the ground before it lets you go. Way in front of us is Power Tower, which is a 300-foot power shot tower, combination power shot and drop tower. And that circling thing in front of us is one of the older rides in the park. It was a revelation when it was built. Corkscrew, the first roller coaster to have 3 inversions. One of them is a loop that you can't see that's off to the side. Actually, no, it's just to the right of the corkscrew. You can see the part of the loop, and then the corkscrew itself, which is 2 loops. And there it goes. Cedar Point specializes in placing these rides in your face. So everywhere you go, these rides are right in front of you. You can almost touch them. You can get up that close. And it's pretty awesome. I mean, it just is a really visceral experience. That's one of the things I love about the park. The orange track that you see in front of us, well, it's sort of, there's yellow and red. That's Iron Dragon, which was not running, and I'll explain why a little later. And then above it, the other sort of orange track, that is Rougarou, formerly Mantis, which is yet another Bolliger and Mabillard ride. It used to be a stand-up coaster, now it's a sit-down coaster, but it's really intense. Just one loop after another. You don't know which end is up. And this massive hill in front of us is one of the signature rides of the park, Millennium Force, built in 2000, considered one of the greatest roller coasters ever built. It was built for speed. It's 300 feet high, and it goes 95 miles an hour. And you feel every little bit of that 95 miles an hour. Come during mayfly season. Cedar Point, in the end of May, usually, is swarmed with mayflies. And if you ride Millennium Force then, you will get pelted with mayflies at 95 miles an hour. Over there on the left were some of the food trucks. There's the station for Iron Dragon, which is a suspended coaster with the cabs that swing out and back and forth. It's one of my favorite rides in the park. In front of us is the Cedar Point and Lake Erie Railroad, the South Station. There's also a North Station, which we'll see in a bit. That is a set of beautiful coal-fired steam engines that are kept in great condition, and they have the highest capacity of any ride in the park, and they take you from the north end to the south end. I'm sorry, south end to the north end. Well, back and forth. And each way is a different experience. When you go to the north end, you're running along the lake shore, and when you come back, you go through Boneville, which has a lot of fun animatronics that the kids like. So we're going to keep walking. If we go straight here, that would take us to the entrance of Rougarou, and that's a dead end. So instead we're going to take a left, and we're going to continue on to the frontier section. I've been pilloried for this in the past, but I'll say it again. Cedar Point is the largest amusement park in the world. And the reason I say that is because it's truly an amusement park. It's an old-style, Midway-focused, sort of like a county fair on steroids. It is not a theme park. Like Disney is a theme park and Kings Island is a theme park. There are a lot of theme parks that technically are larger for landmass, but Cedar Point is a true amusement park. Where we are heading is just about the only themed section in the park, but even then it's not, they don't really focus it as a theme park. It's just happens to be a certain look to the area. There goes Millennium Force coming back to the station. There were a lot of people in this park that day, the opening day. It was a beautiful day, as you can see, you know, hazy blue skies, but fairly warm temperatures in the mid-60s, which is great for that area. And the parking lot at the beginning of the day, around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, when I was filming this, there were about 3/4 full. And the parking lot is gargantuan. So that's pretty impressive that they had that many people on opening day, even with all the stuff not running. There were quite a few long lines. It's the longest. I almost waited for Blue Streak, the wooden coaster we saw earlier. That one was almost 2 hours if I wanted to ride that, and I gave up halfway through, and I said I'll come back later. And then it was a walk-on when I came back. But all of the big rides had really long lines. You were expect to wait about an hour to an hour and a half. And normally on a busy day, Cedar Point will hold about 30,000 people. That's an average crowd. So, yeah, if you get here early, then you have a chance to get on to the major rides early and get through the lines in a reasonable time. If you are staying at Cedar Point, which has a big resort, they have beautiful cabins on the lake, they've got RV spots, they've got the Breakers Hotel, which we'll see later, they've got the Breakers Express, which is down the street. So they have all these different options. So if you are staying at a Cedar Point property, you get early entrance to the park. And only a few rides are open at that point, but it gets you into the park early. There's the Albert, one of the old steam engines that is no longer in service, and they keep it there as a decoration. And here comes Millennium Force back again. That's what I mean about the rides being all around you. So now we're entering the wilderness frontier, and this is actually a recreation of what an old Ohio settlement might have looked like. They actually got real buildings and reconstructed them in the park. They moved them here and rebuilt it to create this little village in this area. Now, not much was open in this area, but it really is nice, and especially on a hot summer day, this is all real shady in here. It's nice and cool. Now, even though it's not a theme park, there are named sections, like this technically is called Frontier Trail. We just came from the main Midway and then went into the Millennium Midway. So they do name sections, but there's no real attempt to theme the sections except for this area here. So you can see all these buildings are just gorgeous, beautiful recreations. At one point there were lots and lots of shops in each one. Like I said, on this day there was nothing. Now I hear one of the steam trains coming, so I'm going to see if I can see it over here. But I don't think I can with all that growth. And no. So let's keep moving on. And as always in these videos, the parks love to play pop music. And since that does content matching, I usually will reverse the track. So if you hear backwards music playing, it doesn't mean we've gone to hell. It just means that I'm trying to avoid copyright infringement. You can see these are all little shops that would be in here during the normal season. There goes the train over there. That's going through Boneville. There goes Millennium Force again. Back on the right, they had pony rides for kids. So if you have little kids that like horses, they can get little pony rides there. Now this section out here was, well, there's Frontier Fling. It's basically just a sky coaster. And it was Professor Delbert's Frontier Fling, and Professor Delbert used to be here, one of the characters in Cedar Point, and he's gone. I don't know where he went to. But you notice Forbidden Frontier over there. That was a really neat interactive section of the park that started in 2019, right before the pandemic. And it didn't get the response that they hoped because, of course, there was a pandemic, and they discontinued it. So it's no longer happening, which is a shame. I thought it was a really nice idea with lots of stuff for families to do together out there and really good food places. Over on the left is a little animal land. They have camels and goats and stuff for like a petting zoo. Now up over on the left is the entrance to Thunder Canyon, which is the park's huge rapids ride, and you will get soaked on that. The Addington Mill is a historic relic. It has a grist mill in there and just a really nice piece of scenery that you can interact with. Now this building over here, Watkins, it used to be Wild Turnip last year, and it was the one vegetarian stand in the whole park, which pleased me, but I guess nobody else was really pleased by it. It was closed while we were there, and the sign outside says it serves emu eggs, emu omelets. I guess that's what they're going to be having. I don't know, but I wasn't there to find out. Over on the right is Snake River Falls, which is the park's huge shoot-the-chute ride, another record setter when it was opened. And of course, being a chilly day in late spring, it wasn't running. And over on the left here is Maverick. Maverick is a really intense ride. It has a lot of changes of direction. And it wasn't running at the time I was walking through the park because the back end of the park over here, or the north end of the park, usually opens a little later than the rest of the park. So you'll see a huge line waiting to get on Maverick. It was almost ready to open when I was walking through. And I should mention that as we were crossing the bridge, over on the left there was a circular building and an attached building made of glass bottles, and that has daily glass blowing demonstrations that are pretty interesting. So over here, there's more food concessions. There's Big Cedar Farm, which last year was new. That's a huge eatery. And that's the park's wave swinger, and that wasn't working while we were there. Looks like they still needed to add some more pieces to it. Maverick is doing test runs here, so you'll see the car fly by in a second. Or not. All right, don't. Now, over here used to be a Chick-fil-A, and that's gone, and instead we have the Frontier Inn. What's happening is Cedar Point is basically moving all food in-house. So they're doing it themselves. And one of the reasons is they used to have a lot of small individual food places scattered around the park, and it took an enormous number of people to staff them. And obviously, they don't have the people anymore. They're having a lot of staffing issues. So what management decided, and I think it's a smart idea, is to instead get big buildings with a few people and have lots of food in just each building. So you don't need as many people to run it, but you can offer even more food, and you can offer it to them more quickly. And the food we had, and I'll talk about that a little later on, food we had there was excellent. They're doing a really good job with their own food. It's not the typical just hamburgers and hot dogs and chicken wings. So here you can see the line for Maverick stretching all the way around. This is the end of the line. The entrance, you'll see, is up further on the left. And this is the place on the right that used to be the antique car ride and was repurposed for Big Cedar Farms. The park is famous for crowd management and queue lines. Remember I said that they have like 1 to 2 hour waits on busy days, but the number of people they cycle through is pretty impressive. They make sure that all of their rides have really high capacity so you don't wait an enormous amount of time to get on. For instance, in the distance there, that huge hill, that's Steel Vengeance, which is an absolutely incredible coaster, a reimagining of their old Mean Streak wooden coaster. And I had an early ride on that. I got in line when, just like with Maverick, when it was still testing. And it looked like it was going to take hours to get through, but it only took about 15 minutes. The crowd moved so quickly through it, and they were running 2 trains really smoothly. So really, you'll be surprised how quickly you can get through on a busy day. And there's Sagebrush Sue's, one of my favorite places in the park, because that was a cheese on a stick stand. That's pretty much all they had, cheese on a stick and lemonade. And it was closed. Sad, sad, sad. So we'll keep moving on through Frontier Town here. There's the Palace Theater. And like most amusement parks, they have discovered that there's a lot of profit to be made in alcohol. So nearly every restaurant will have beer. So there's actually one beer station right on the main Midway that they place there. So lots of beer all over the place. And of course, beer and spinning rides are not a great mixture, but that's their choice. And back here is a little ice cream shop. That's pretty good. That wasn't open when we were there. There's a Build-A-Bear. I don't remember that from the past, but there is a Build-A-Bear workshop for little kids. They also had more picnic tables placed in this area than they had in the past, which is good because people need places to sit and eat. The coaster that you see in front of us there is the Cedar Creek Mine Ride. And that's one of the older rides in the park. That's an aero mine train. And it's short but fun. Especially good for small fry who can make the height requirement. It's a good sort of starter coaster for them. And the other big hills you can see are Millennium Force. Now if we were to take a right over here, that would take us to a dead end. Down there used to be the Cedar Point Museum, the Town Hall Museum. And it was really neat. It had lots of relics from Cedar Point's past. It had models of the coasters that you could look at. It was really fun. I used to like stopping in there. And it was air conditioned, which is great in the summer. But they've decided not to do that anymore. They're not going to open the museum anymore, which I think is a shame. There you can see the layout of the mine train. So we are now at the far north end of the park. By the way, near Sagebrush Sue's was the entrance to the north station of the Cedar Point and Lake Erie Railroad, and that's also where you would go if you wanted to queue up for Steel Vengeance. That's where the queue line starts, is over there. The Slingshot are those towers that are in front of us now. And there's also a railroad crossing there for the train. And that circular track that you see there, that is Gemini, which when it was built was the largest roller coaster in the world at 124 feet high. It's a dual-tracked racing coaster. It also used to have the highest capacity in the park. They ran 6 trains on that, which is mind-blowing. And they only run usually 2 now, which is plenty. But it's still a fun ride. Some people call it an overgrown mine train, but I find it fun. There's some good airtime on it. So now we're walking onto the Gemini Midway. That huge yellow tower that you see on the right used to be Top Thrill Dragster. It is no more. Top Thrill Dragster, the top hat, that's what that's called. The top hat is still standing, but nothing else is there, and I'll explain that a little further on. And here's the Happy Friar, another one of my favorite haunts because it also has, usually, cheese on a stick. Not so that day, but that's where I would often get it and just sit under one of those umbrellas and chow down. And around the corner from the Happy Friar is Camp Snoopy, which is the park's big kiddie area. In fact, you could glimpse on the right there a little bit of Woodstock Express, which is one of the 2 kiddie coasters in the park. And it's a really nice area, nicely themed to the Peanuts comic strip. And we've explored that in a past video, so I'm not going to go through there again. Instead, we'll keep moseying on the Gemini Midway. And this is Pipe Scream in front of us. And you can see the nice parabolic hills on Gemini. Gives you good airtime. You just float out of your seat. And there goes one of the trains testing on the run. When they used to race them, it was lots of fun because you're right near the other train. So you really feel like you're in a race all the way through, side by side. And up ahead on the left, you can see the Lake Erie Eagles, which is a nicely themed flying scooters ride. There's Wilderness Run, the other kiddie coaster in the Camp Snoopy section. And up ahead, you can see Monster, which is the spider-like ride that they have there. And I love the colors on it. In fact, Cedar Point just has so many bright colors. It just gives it such a fun feeling, no matter where you are on any section of Midway. The only exception, of course, is the Frontier Trail section, which is more muted. But generally, where there are lots of rides, there's lots of color, and it just makes the whole place pop. And you notice all these lights strung above our heads, so at night it really feels like an old county fair Midway. And there's that huge tower from Top Thrill Dragster. Up ahead is another eatery on the left. It used to be the home of the Witch's Wheel, which is sorely missed by many old Cedar Point fans. But food is king at Cedar Point these days, and they put in Backbeat Q. I hate that name, but that's what they called it, Backbeat Q. And I guess the idea was they have musicians playing out there during the day, so you got music and you got barbecue. Oh, and out there is Snake River Expedition, which used to tie into the Wilderness Expedition place that they shut down. I'm not sure how they're going to tie this in now. But that was the old boat ride from Cedar Point that they resurrected with a new theme, and it was a lot of fun. It's a good family ride. So I'm glad to see they at least kept that. Of course, it wasn't running because of staffing issues, but it will be running later on in the summer. So, up here in front of us, I'll get to Top Thrill Dragster eventually. Up here in front of us is the station for Magnum XL200. Magnum was the first roller coaster to break the 200-foot barrier at 205 feet, and it's still an incredible ride. A beautiful location right on the edge of the lake. It is punchy, and with probably the most violent airtime I've ever experienced. So, there's the remaining track of Top Thrill Dragster on the right. Cedar Point has said that for next year, 2024, they are reimagining the ride. That was their line. We're reimagining it. And they want to bring us a new thrill experience that's never been seen before. And so naturally the roller coaster and amusement park community is abuzz with what exactly that might mean. Nobody is sure. A little later on, I'm going to show you some of the construction work that you can barely see. They do a good job of trying to hide it so that it's not intrusive. But there's definitely something going on, and nobody's sure what. But it's definitely going to change the ride, and it may change the ride's profile. It may change the ride's experience. Who knows? But definitely a lot of work going on. And you can see way down there is a crane, and that's part of inside Top Thrill Dragster's station area. They're doing a lot of lifting over there. So we'll just keep moving down this stretch of Midway. If you're in this area, the Ohio area, the Cedar Point Pass, if you get like the Platinum Pass, is a really good deal because it gets you into all the Cedar Fair properties. And in Ohio, that includes Kings Island, and not too far a drive is Kings Dominion in Virginia. So it can be really worth it because those are delightful parks with lots and lots of things to do. There you can see the end of what was left of the original Top Thrill Dragster track. The track was supposedly loaded on boats and shipped off to Italy. That's what people are saying. Way over on the left there, that massive building is the Breakers Hotel. And it's a really nice place, luxurious, not cheap, but it's right on the lake, and it gives you direct access to the park, right along the boardwalk. So a lot of families choose to stay there. It's a very nice location. Over here on the left is the Corkscrew Station. And notice all this fencing where Top Thrill Dragster's track used to be able to be seen. And that fencing might be familiar to some of you who saw my video last year because it's the same fencing that they used to hide the boardwalk area when they were constructing that. In fact, you can see the different nail places and screw places in the boards where they had put them together differently. This right here, they haven't taken out. It's the grandstand where people used to be able to sit like a racetrack and watch Top Thrill Dragster blast off. Since they haven't gotten rid of that, maybe they're going to keep it. They might not, but maybe they're going to keep it, so maybe the ride, the new ride, whatever it is, will still blast by there and people can watch. But yeah, this is a lot of work going on. The building with the racing stripes on it is called Thrill Zone, and that has a lot of coaster-themed gifts, hats, shirts. We're technically still on the Gemini Midway coming through here until we meet back up with the main Midway by the Corkscrew. There's the Cedar Point Water Tower over there, and good old Power Tower. Stan Checkett's the guy who formed S&S, the company that made the Power Tower. He passed away, I think, a year or two ago. And he was famous for a photo of him where he stood on the top of the Power Tower without any restraints holding him in there, just as sort of a display of look at what we can do. Let's take a peek in here. I can't really see much, but you can see the big crane that's in there. See if we can slip in a little further down here and see more of what's going on. Iron Dragon, the coaster that's in front of us now, that had been partially dismantled in order to do the work they needed to do. It's back together now, but it won't open for a few more weeks from when I was there. So if you're coming after May 14th or so, it should be open. There's a slightly better view, but still not a lot you can see. You can just tell they're doing a lot of demolition work in there. But around here, you can sort of see off in the distance these large footers. Now, people were saying they are gigantic. You can see it between the two pillars in front of us. Right in the middle, there's one of the footers. And a footer is basically a place where, well, these are footers, what we're looking at right now, where the big posts land on the concrete. That's a footer to hold the post. And people were saying that they are huge. They didn't strike me as very huge. They seemed sort of average-sized footers for a large coaster. But you can sort of see them out there in the pond by Iron Dragon Station. There are 3 of them there, and there are a couple more that are being put in inside the undercover there. So whatever they're building, it's going to be pretty big. No one has any idea what. People are saying, well, it's going to be a spike for a backwards roll, but nobody knows. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when it all comes out next year. So now we're heading back onto the main Midway. The blue building beyond the corkscrew, that's the North Skyride Station. Over here on the left, they used to have a really good fresh lemonade stand. Obviously not there right now. May show up again in the summer, don't know. And you can see here how the corkscrew just sort of surrounds you. You can walk under it and near it. Pretty impressive, especially for small children. This would be just a phenomenal thing to see. Now those spires that you see in the distance there, those are on top of the Coliseum, one of the largest buildings in the park and one of the oldest buildings in the park. That's where park offices are located, and also underneath it is a huge arcade that used to have some fantastic pinball machines. They were all retired, unfortunately, so there's no more pinball. And I miss them because I used to have a lot of fun playing pinball there. And what we're going to do, instead of going back down the main Midway where we originally came from, we're going to hang a left up here and head toward the new section that was just opened. And I love the theming, quote unquote, in this new section. It's not theming in the sense of Disney theming. It's basically an overall artistic look they give to the entire area. And Cedar Point loves to sort of hark back to its roots. When you first enter the park from the causeway, they used to have this long sign with big letters that said Cedar Point and all these colorful flags lining it. And you'll notice that's what they've done up here. They've tried to recreate that feeling of seeing that sign with all the different colors on it. They even have a sign that almost mimics the original Cedar Point sign. You'll see that as we get there. Over here on the right is Planet Snoopy. And Planet Snoopy is another kids area. It was not open while we were there, again because of staffing issues. But there are lots of kiddie rides in that area as well. In front of us is Windseeker, which is the park's big swing tower, and that was not running while we were there. Over on the left is Melt, where you can get really decadent grilled cheeses. That was not open while we were there. You can see some of the plantings starting to appear here on the right around the Kiddie Turnpike ride there. One thing I forgot to mention, back on the right as we were walking into this area, there's the Pagoda Gift Shop, which is, in my opinion, the best shop in the entire park. Lots of coaster-themed gifts, a lot of really interesting stuff, and this year they had a recreation of the Cedar Point Railroad car made by Lionel in all metal. It wasn't cheap, but it was certainly worth it if you like model railroads. There's that Boardwalk sign I was telling you about over on the left, and you can see little flags on it. And there's another one down by Gatekeeper as well. And there's the Wild Mouse. So let's walk through this Boardwalk section. So all through this section, you're going to notice those bright colors I was talking about. Like on this ride over here, the Atomic Scrambler has all those bright oranges and yellows, and it fits right in with the Mad Mouse, which has similar colors. And the Mad Mouse is a spinning coaster. It is mildly intense. It's marketed as a family ride. I would probably get sick on it because of the spinning motion, but I'm sure a lot of families and kids will enjoy it. And over here are kiddie bumper cars from the Planet Snoopy area. Over on the left is the Matterhorn, which is another classic ride that was relocated. There's the Ferris wheel. And then over here on the left is the big thing in this area. It's the Grand Pavilion. which is really impressive. I wasn't expecting it to be that incredible. Built from the ground up, but it looks like it's been there 100 years. And it's basically just a food concession, but really good food. I had fried fish, which doesn't sound exciting, along with some Spanish rice, and I had a key lime pie, and I think broccoli, which doesn't sound exciting, but it was really good. Very flavorful. I mean, cooked to perfection. There's the Wild Mouse entrance, and you can see people still waiting, hoping that it was going to open. Cedar Point did a cute thing with this. They created all these different mouse characters with different personalities, and each of the cars on the track have that face of one of those characters, so you can go for your favorite mouse character. So here we are at the Grand Pavilion. Notice the detail in just the pavement. It's concrete, but it's made to look like wood planking, which is a nice touch. Notice all the windows on this building. There are a lot more windows on the other side, and it looks right out over Lake Erie. In fact, there are decks, exterior decks you can go on that also look right out on the lake. It's really pretty. So let's take a quick visit inside so you can see. And it's a very busy place, but like I said, the crowds move through very quickly. And this is the main place where you can order. There's also a place where you can order sort of like Bavarian nuts and stuff up these stairs. And there's a full bar up those stairs as well, with a wine rack shaped like a roller coaster, which I thought was really neat. There's an elevator if you need to get up there in a wheelchair. And these are incredible. These are the original stained glass windows that used to be in the Park Coliseum and were in storage for many years. And when they built this new building, they put those antique stained glass windows inside this building. So that was a nice touch. And there's the huge Ferris wheel. So that's the new boardwalk area, and there actually is a literal boardwalk. Well, it's concrete, it's not wood, on the other side of the Grand Pavilion. So if you were to go around to the left by Gatekeeper, there is a path that's actually running alongside the front there all the way over to the breakers. So you can walk right along the shoreline. We're coming up on the right here to Kitty Kingdom, which is another kids section besides Planet Snoopy. That has the other beautiful carousel, Denzel Carousel is in that area, another very old ride. This is Max Air, a giant frisbee ride. And then down the left side here are all game concessions and some food concessions over to the far left. And also, something I didn't mention, the entrance to Gatekeeper, the coaster we saw at the very beginning of this video. And this path is going to bring us back out onto the main Midway. You can see the Skyride cars above and Valraven there over on the right. And the seemingly tiny Raptor, which used to be such a massive ride when they first put it in, and now it seems quaint by comparison, but it still packs a punch. There's another view of Kitty Kingdom, and that's the roof of the Denzel Carousel. Again, beautiful colors. And when they have all the plantings in place, it's the same thing. It's bright reds and yellows and blues. This used to be Johnny Rockets, and I don't know what they're going to do with it. It's completely empty. Johnny Rockets is gone, and they're going to do something else with it. I don't know if it's going to be an arcade or what, but. And on the left over here, you'll notice there are some people at a cash-to-card kiosk. Cedar Point officially went cashless this year. Again, notice how many concessions are closed, once again because of the lack of help. So if you're looking for a good summer job, go to Cedar Point. They need people. It's actually where our daughters worked for a few seasons. And what's nice is they have dorms out here so that the kids can stay in the dorms and they don't have to worry about getting an apartment or anything like that for the season. There's the entrance to the Sky Ride for the south end. And over on the left, that little barn is Toff's, which is a local creamery that has lots and lots and lots of ice cream. They have phenomenal milkshakes. Best milkshakes in the park are in there. Of course, they weren't open when I was there, but there you are. Also, underneath the Skyride section is CP Shops, and CP Shops has more wonderful coaster-themed t-shirts and models and things like that. So, plenty of places to get your Cedar Point fix to take home with you. And, of course, the obligatory Starbucks. And there's the Mueller Carousel in front of us at the front of the park. So, that concludes our 2023 tour of Cedar Point. Now, a lot of big changes for this season, but even bigger changes coming next season. So I'm eager to see what's happening with that. So if you are in the northern Ohio area, you have to stop at Cedar Point. If you have never been here, there is a reason why they call it the Amazement Park. It is absolutely amazing. You can't do this park in one day. It's impossible. It's too big. So plan on staying over. There are plenty of other hotels in the area. We usually stay at a place down the street called the South Shore Inn, which is very reasonable and very nice. And we don't get special treatment in the park. You know, we don't get to get in early and we don't get special passes, anything like that. But it's a very nice hotel that isn't in the hundreds of dollars. So if you are in this area, you have to check out America's roller coaster, Cedar Point.